Okay. Good morning to everybody. Happy Friday. It's nice to see some familiar faces and meet a few new ones. I'm Matt Daly. I'm the Dean of Students here at ISU, and just wanted to thank everybody for coming. Just wanted to thank the College of Business, the College of Education, and Trio for their sponsor, Trio. Okay, thank you. We can clap for Trio. Come on, that's all right. Um, but it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, who has come across the country to spend time with us. Dr. Aaron Brown is a first generation TRIO alumnus who earned a PhD in public affairs from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Dr. Brown has 20 years of higher ed experience serving in a variety of roles, including assistant vice provost, associate dean for student development and achievement, director of TRIO student support services, first-year experience instructor, and elected member of the Faculty Senate. Through the submission of multiple federal and local grants, Dr. Brown has secured millions of dollars across 3 institutions to help low-income students, first-generation students, and students with disabilities achieve college access and success. He is a past president and founding board member of the Washington State TRIO Association, designed and oversaw the development of Central Washington University's inaugural transfer center, served as a key visionary behind the Major Pathways program at UNLV, endowed a scholarship for low-income veterans at Eastern Washington University, and has served as a faculty member for Priority 2 and Priority 4 federal training grants. Before joining the council as executive vice president, he was the assistant vice provost for academic advising at the University of Texas at Arlington, where he provided leadership and support for the University Advising Center and advised initiatives across the institution, including the collaborative design of an academic advising strategic plan that increased holistic, coordinated care for students. So I just am really grateful, and it was nice to meet you this morning, Dr. Brown, but I'd love to introduce Dr. Brown, our speaker for this morning. Thank you very much. Let's get on.
Start my timer here and make sure I'm on time. Well, welcome everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here this morning with you all. I'm a native Washingtonian, actually, born and raised in Southern Washington. Anybody familiar with Kennewick, Tri-Cities area? Yep. I actually didn't live in Kennewick for very long. I mostly spent my time living as a child in Kiona, which is it's an unincorporated community town. It's not even a town. It's not even a city. It's a very agricultural part of the country. So I come from rural America. And as Matt noted, I was also a first generation low income student when I eventually got to college. I was a non-traditional student. So I actually took what ended up being a gap year, even though that year I didn't even know I was going to go to college. So at another time, we can talk about that. I'd love to share that experience with you. But I was definitely not one of the students that you get as your first time full-time freshman. I was definitely non-traditional. But as I said, I mentioned this to some of your colleagues at dinner with last night. My wife actually graduated from Priest River, Idaho. Anybody know where Priest River is? A couple of you, yeah, so a couple of you know that. So Sandpoint might ring a bell with a few. So it's up there in the panhandle of Idaho, and spent 17 years living in Spokane. So as you can imagine, I took every opportunity I could to get over to Coeur d'Alene because Coeur d'Alene Lake is just spectacular. It's beautiful. And I learned how to snowboard at Silver, believe it or not. This was many, many years after I became an adult and was actually making some money I could afford to go skiing, which is something that low-income students generally don't do. And I did not do that as a child. So with all that being said, it is such a pleasure to be here in Idaho. I had the honor and privilege of being able to break bread with Congressman Mike Simpson about 3 weeks ago on Capitol Hill, where we both spoke at a Capitol Hill event recognizing the importance of first-generation low-income students and recognizing the National TRIO Day that was celebrated on February 28th. So it was great to talk with Mike Simpson again. Let's talk a little bit about this morning in terms of where we're going to go. And, oh, yes, it works. Okay. Technology is my friend this morning. All right. So I'm going to spend a lot of time just going over some very important learning strategies ways to engage students in the classroom and outside the classroom. And one of the things that I'm going to need from you all is participation, because I'm going to be doing a lot of modeling of some things that you could do, not exactly the way I'm doing it, but give you some ideas if you're not already doing these things. So throughout, I'm going to be using things like Slido to ask you questions. And so hopefully you've got iPhones or Samsung phones. You can, do the QR code and all that and respond. We're going to do some group work. We're going to do some individual thinking and reflecting on some of the things that we're talking about. All true, tried and true things that we do in Trio, right? And they work. So one of the places we're going to go this morning is we're going to start off with looking at the data at ISU. I spent some time examining some of your common data sets. You have some really cool dashboards. I don't know if, as faculty, if you've spent any time there, but there's a lot of data there. And I also know that you use Navigate now, and it has a wealth of data there too, I would imagine. So we're going to just do some service level look at data that's important. And some of the data pieces that are important to your state, and especially as they start talking about budgets and how to, fund higher education. Some of these data points obviously are going to be a part of those equations if they're not already. The second thing we're going to do, and as you notice, this whole topic is about being a student-ready campus. So we're going to be talking about what does that mean, right? What does it mean to be a student-ready campus? And we're going to discuss 3 interconnected areas that help promote a student-ready campus, okay? And then lastly, we're going to spend the bulk of our time doing that kind of active learning, interactive pieces that I love to do whenever I teach. So with that being said, we need to make sure that you all can do our Slidos. So I'm going to ask you a kind of a prep question here to kind of get us going. So pull out your phones. And this is our kind of getting our feet wet here with the Slido. I want you to answer the question, what do you enjoy most about teaching? What do you enjoy most about teaching at Idaho State University? And once you get in there, we should start to see if it's working correctly. Yes. Awesome. Keep them coming. And for those of you online, please participate. We want to hear your voice too. Seeing the light go on, smaller class sizes, student insights, the aha moments. Yeah. Engaging. I'm seeing engaging in there a lot. Seeing growth, watching students engage in deep learning. That's pretty cool. So you can see very quickly, this is something that you could do very easily. Slido goes right into your PowerPoint slides. It took me a couple of minutes to figure out how to do it. I intentionally picked a tool that I'd never used before because I want to see if I could do it. I know you all can do it. So you were my test run and it's working. See? Student insights. And I know, but we do have, you all are good. You guys are going to be grace, give me a lot of grace because you understand. But students, they want to expect, high level competency when it comes to using technology. I get it. All right, so that's great. What do you enjoy most about teaching? Student insights, those aha moments. All right, that was a practice run. Okay, now what I want to do, I want to start us off with a little bit of a student story here this morning. And I'm gonna read the intro, and then I've got some volunteers who are going to keep the story going for us. So I want you to imagine for a moment, a student is arriving on campus at ISU for their very first day of college. Okay? They're excited, but they're also unsure. They're a little nervous. No one in their family has ever gone to college before. And you know what? They're actually raising a child as well. They're a single parent. They want this opportunity to change their future and the future of their child, and they believe that education is one way, an important way that they can do that. They arrive about 10 minutes early, thinking that they planned really well. They showed up early. But as you can imagine, at some campuses, and maybe I don't know if this is true for ISU, but they couldn't find a parking spot. The only available spots ends up being across campus. And so now they're already feeling anxious. They try to figure out where their building is using their phone. They get turned around. And by the time they arrive to class, guess what? They're about 20 minutes late on that very first day. In that moment, something shifts in the mind of that student. They begin to wonder, maybe I don't belong here. And over the next semester, the challenges continue: childcare issues, academic struggles, and financial stresses.
At one point, they realize they need to meet with an advisor to plan their courses for the next term. They go to the advising office hoping to schedule an appointment. The earliest available opening is 2 weeks away. When they finally meet with their advisor, the advisor offers some direct and well-intended guidance. They emphasize how important it is for the student to read all of their emails the advising office sends, and how the student would benefit from using their online schedule appointment. Things that could have been discussed well in advance if the institution had a new student orientation program that focused on academics and the classroom, as well as creating a sense of belonging. Unfortunately, they're at the meeting with their advisor for the first time while registration for the next term has already begun. Sadly, many of the courses they need are full or only offered at times that conflict with childcare. They end up enrolling in the only sections that fits their schedule, which means taking fewer credits than they had planned. That part-time enrollment then affects their financial aid and slows their progress towards a degree. The student explains to the advisor that they receive emails from so many parts of campus: financial aid, student accounts, advising, student life, campus announcements, that it becomes difficult to know which messages require immediate attention, which can wait, and which are not relevant. The advisor then encourages the student to meet with a financial aid counselor to understand how part-time enrollment might affect their aid.
The student follows through and meets with a financial aid. During that conversation, it becomes clear that the student might benefit from using the campus food pantry and from exploring career options to help clarify their academic direction. The financial aid counselor recommends that they speak with their academic advisor about career readiness and support resources. The student schedules another advising appointment. The next available time is about 3 weeks out. When they finally meet again, they learn that their advisor has not actually the right person to discuss the topics with. They are told that they should instead visit the Career Center office or Career Explorations and the Dean of Students office regarding the food pantry. These two locations and the student has never been before. They do not know anyone there, and the semester is now winding down. They have too much on their plate as it is. The idea of starting over again, explaining the situation to new people, feeling overwhelmed. Then they begin to doubt if either office could actually help them. None of the individuals involved intend to create confusion. Each person was trying to help with the role, but for the student, the experience feels like a series of disconnected steps. In one of their courses, general psychology, they start to struggle. They want to do well, but they decide to go to their instructor's office hours. The first time they go, the instructor was not there when they arrived. They wait then 15 minutes and leave because they have work to do. They then try again the next week. This time the instructor is meeting with another student. They wait again. But after 15 minutes, they have to leave to pick up their child from daycare. They do not try again. They just attempt to figure things out on their own. In another class, something different happens. The instructor notices the student is struggling and asks to meet another class. During the conversation, the faculty member begins to understand some of the challenges the student is navigating: childcare, work, transportation, scheduling, and the experience of getting shuffled from one office to another. The faculty member wants to help, but feels unsure what support exists beyond the academic guidance. Not knowing that the university has recently developed an early alert system, the instructor encourages the student to seek help through the Office of Student Success. The student considers it, but feels overwhelmed. going to the new office, explaining their situation again to someone else, and navigating another unfamiliar process feels intimidating. Instead, they rely on their peers for help. That support is enough to get them to pass the course, but just barely.
Overall, they managed to pass all their courses actually that semester. They're capable, as they've demonstrated. Their GPA actually is a 2.5 by the end of their first 2 semesters. But they have only completed a small number of credits and still technically a first-year student going into their second year. So eventually the barriers feel overwhelming and they end up stopping out. Not because they could not return or because they could not learn, sorry, but because navigating college became simply too much. So let me ask you a question, show of hands. Any of that resonate with some of the stories you've heard from students? Okay, a few of you? Okay, yep. The stories like this are not about any one particular individual, person on a campus or any one particular office. They reflect how complicated navigating college can be, particularly for first-generation college students, low-income students. And especially with groups that are balancing multiple responsibilities and entering unfamiliar systems. And across higher education, here at Idaho State, I would imagine, there is a growing recognition that student success is shaped not only by what students bring with them, so we call it preparedness, right? But also how we design systems and supports and how we engage with our students inside the classroom. That kind of it describes what I would speak to you about in terms of student-ready campus. And today I want to explore one important part of that question: how faculty practices shape learning, discovery, and student success. And so we're very focused on how faculty play a key part in creating a student-ready campus. And so an element of being a student-ready campus is kind of knowing who your students are, right? Having a general sense of some of the barriers and issues that they may be facing and where we're doing really well as a campus. And so I've got up on the screen just some basic data points that I gathered from your common data set in your IR data. Student populations across higher education, and I think I'm telling you anything you don't know, they're changing, right? They continue to change. They're becoming more diverse. They have different needs, each one of the students that you work with, and they are balancing work, family, all kinds of obligations, and then also throwing at the financial pressures that they have, in addition to the assignments and the studies that you give them. And I think it's important to understand who our students are, which helps inform how institutions can design systems and how faculty can design learning experiences. So you can see here from this slide, you have how many students you roughly have right now, around 10,850 undergrad students. That number is going to be slightly different, potentially on standing in this moment. But when I looked at your data set for, I believe it was the 24-25 year, that's roughly where you were. 2,000 of those students approximately are graduate students. But did you know that you also have about 44% of your students are coming in saying they're first gen? That actually, if you look at the state of Idaho, that actually is, I believe it's close to where the state is for the universities, but I believe you're a little bit higher. So I think it's around 40%, but you actually a little bit higher. Does that surprise anybody? Not really. No one seems too surprised by that. But that's where you are when I looked at your data. Entering first gen, 53%. So overall, you're 44, but of the students that are coming in first time, full time, they're actually at a higher clip coming in as first gen. And about 40% are coming in receiving or Pell eligible. So you have about 40% who could be categorized as low income. Some more data here. And I would say, I read some of your reports as well that you have, and I'll be mentioning this later, about your 2024 mid-cycle self-evaluation. But when I looked at the data, you do have what I believe is some intentional efforts that have actually created an increase in your first-time, full-time freshman retention rate. So you can see there, 64% retention rate from fall to fall in FY19. That's actually gone up by, all the way up to 74% for fiscal year 23. And hopefully you're still on that same upward projection, and we'll continue to move that beyond 74%. You're actually, I'm going to talk about this here in a little bit, but my little red dot thing doesn't want to work. But you're actually seeing some movement on the completion rates, but well, it's not my place to judge. But obviously, 36% is an area you want to improve on, continue to improve on tremendously. But you've gone up from 29%, and I believe that was for FY 2011 cohort. So we'll talk about that here in a second. You've seen some meaningful improvements in first year retention in recent years, but I just wonder also from the perspective of faculty, what factors do you think are actually contributing to this improvement? I'm going to ask you that question on the Slido. What factors do you think may be contributing to the improvement in your retention rates of first-time full-time freshmen? And by the way, I forgot to mention this. If you don't have, or if you don't want to use your phone, feel free to just jot it down on a piece of paper and shout it out when I ask. Okay, so online and hybrid options. Does somebody want to say more about that? How is that impacting retention? Because I think it is. And you don't have to be the one that said it. Does anyone have a sense of why that might be?
There are a lot more students who flexibility in their
Yeah,
schedules
yeah.
because like
Yep. Yeah.
just online, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the modalities. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Doug. When I call on someone, I'll have to have you use the mic because don't want to leave out our online folks. No, so that's a great point. So, she was talking about, having a variety of modalities really can help students that have, working full-time or even working part-time, maybe have that childcare, or maybe they're taking care of their parents or siblings. I've had many students over the years who were the oldest in their family, and they came to college, but they had responsibilities to do childcare on the weekends or in the evenings. And I had one when I was working in Spokane, and they were going to Eastern. They were from the west side of the state, and they would go back home on the weekends to take care of their kids. And they were struggling to pass their classes. And so we had to sit down and talk about, okay, what other options do you have? Back then, we didn't have as many online options. And so the student ended up having to transfer to another institution on the west side, which is perfectly fine as long as, that's what's good for them. But we had to have that conversation, otherwise they were not going to pass. Early alerts. Yep, we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's different student success programs that are helping in more online options. Yeah, all of those I'm certain are helping. There's a food pantry, it looks like. You have a food pantry here? Awesome. Yeah. Advising, that's great. I love to hear that. Spent many years working in advising, so. Okay, thank you. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, degree completion. And I want to talk about some equity gaps that, obviously are, when you look deeper into the data, you can see some gaps there. While retention has improved in recent years, degree completion remains an area where the institution is in, and I was pleased to see you're continuing to focus on that. According to your 2024 mid-cycle self-evaluation report, the 6-year graduation rate for first-time bachelor-seeking students has improved from 29%, and it doesn't show it on this slide, but 29% for the fall of 2011 to approximately 36% for your 2018 cohort. Now, as you can see, the cohorts since are you're kind of taking like this flat, right? Sort of flat line there. Hopefully the 36.9% starts to go up to 38%, 40%, those sort of things. But how does it happen? It doesn't just happen overnight. And the things that we're going to talk about today in terms of being a student-ready campus will certainly help you move the needle in the right direction. But I would say that the improvements that you're seeing, though, are not by accident. They're the results of meaningful, thoughtful, strategic approaches and progress and impact that your institution is having to make sure that you increase those. But when you look at the reports and the different data points that I've looked at, you can see that there are places, certainly, where there are equity gaps in terms of male completion, people from underrepresented populations. I'll say a little bit more about that here in a second. So when students do not complete a degree, my argument is, and my experience has been for over 25 years now, it's not because they typically lack the ability or the motivation, or they just weren't prepared enough for ISU or the other institutions. Yes, student preparedness is important, and student preparedness is still highly correlated with future success and predicting future success in terms of college. But I would argue that it's insufficient in telling the full story. And if we just focus on, let's just get students here that are fully prepared, your enrollment numbers are definitely going to go way down. But it's not necessary. You can build campus climates and learning environments where students who may not be fully prepared in the way that you want them to be, but they are who they are, and you meet them where they're at. And there's approaches and teaching strategies you can use to do that and help those students who may be coming from a low-income background, a first-gen background, who didn't have that preparedness in the home or in the extracurricular activities that their parents were able to afford to give them. So despite the improvements we discussed earlier, as I mentioned, the completion rates, when I looked at it, I saw some of these numbers right here. And it's not surprising because you'll see that at other institutions as well. When you look at your low-income students, you'll typically see that they're performing under what your regular student body is performing, and that's a completion percentage of 27%. And it's the same for first-generation students as well. That's very consistent nationally with what I've seen. But when you look at programs like TRIO, I'm going to put a plug in there for TRIO, shameless plug. The data points look completely different. You're going to see completion rates in the 70s and 80s. You're going to see a lot of success happening. And why? It's because they do a lot of things I'm going to be talking about today in terms of engaging their students. But they also provide those wraparound holistic supports that faculty either don't have that competency level to provide, or that's just not in their roles. But they can partner with institutional systems and partners to help do that, right? When we're working all as a team. But for today's discussion, and that kind of leads me into this interconnected piece, we're going to think about that work happening in three connected areas: the work of creating a student-ready campus, and I'm going to repeat this over and over again. I'm going to have you repeat it as well. They are faculty practices, institutional systems, and student learning strategies. Those are the 3 points we're going to be talking about from here on out. Those 3 elements, when they work together, institutions are much better positioned to support student success. All right, so we're gonna pause for a second. I have been doing enough talking. Let's define what a student-ready campus looks like, right? Because I'm talking about it. We may not all be working from the same, hymnal on what does it look like or what is it. So let's define it. And I want you at your tables, and hopefully everybody's got somebody they're sitting with. If you wouldn't mind joining a group, that would be great. I'm going to have you at your tables and online discuss what you think a student-ready campus would look like. What does it look like? Okay? Now I'll give you about 3 minutes to do that.
Yeah, you're. Yeah.
No, it's. Yeah. Yeah.
So those three things.
Yeah.
What was the faculty practices, institutional systems, and student learning strategies? Oh, I just exited out of that. Should I have joined the group? Okay.
Give a 30-second thing, then I can close the rooms and time it, so they'll.
Say it again.
Give a.
Oh,
30-second
okay.
warning. Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, let me ask you, I'm giving away a few prizes, but how do I handle the online folks?
Or you're gonna give them away.
Well, what
mean,
I could
just-
say, yes, well, no, not randomly, basically people that respond or people who score the highest at the end. But I'm gonna ask for a volunteer or two.
Cause we can mail any of the people who
Okay.
are attending. They're at least at one of our campuses, so we can inter-office mail the items to them.
In case they're one of the top
Yep.
people. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
I'll tell them to speak to you. Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Right.
All right, 30 seconds. Wrap up your thoughts. 30 seconds. Michelle, are our online folks back now? 10 seconds. Okay. 10 seconds, and our online folks will be back with us.
Yeah.
Hello. Michelle, I'm having a technical difficulty now. All of a sudden it's not working.
We do see,
I know.
so,
This thing isn't working. Okay, there it is. Got it. Okay.
all right.
All right, let's come back. Using Slido, how would you define a student-ready campus? How would you define a student-ready campus? Use Slido so we can all see. How would you define a student-ready campus? Hopefully our online folks are able to participate with these too. Right, Michelle's shaking her head, that's one. Okay, yeah. Oh, I like that. Integrating three principles. Nice, nice. Thank you. So would anybody like to just quickly, did one of the groups, one of the tables here, did you come up with something that really resonated you want to share with the rest of the folks about the student ready campus? Laura? Nope.
No, I.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, let's do it. I love that energy.
Oh, I can project. but
Nope.
it's pretty-
It's real online, folks. Yep.
We talked about the dream of a RAG AI agent, where a student can talk in natural language to something that would be able to be connected to what's available and be able to know who that person needs to talk to be able to set up those. I mean, we were talking every single thing that you read,
Yeah.
we've experienced.
Yeah.
We know this happens.
Yeah.
But something where an AI that is available 24/7, that can understand in natural language what a student's asking. Because students cannot decipher higher ed culture, and something that could be aware of all of the different resources.
Okay. Okay, so part of being a student ready campus could mean using technology to help understand where the students are. And not only are they sometimes not able to decipher higher ed, but we're not able to decipher where the learning gaps are or where they're just not connecting.
But it has to work well.
Yes. It can't be the chatbot that you might be using. I don't know. Do you all use the chatbot, like a general one? You do? Okay. I have no idea how successful that is or effective it is. I just know that on my campuses where we've used chatbots, that was early on. It depended a lot on how, if you had people in the background who were telling it these are the right answers. When you didn't maintain it, like think about records and registration and advising. If you're not maintaining that thing, it's going to be sending students all over the place and giving the crazy answers. So we are in that age of AI's learning and we're getting better at it. And so I think down the road for sure, we're going to be able to use it even more and more and be able to trust it more, right? Yeah, I love that. Okay, thank you. And appreciate your participation on the slides there. Oh, we have one more. Okay.
Supports are in place and that students know where they go to access those supports.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So many of the ideas you shared reflect the same themes researchers have identified when they talk about student ready campus. So we had a lot of those ideas that got popped up on the screen. We heard some pieces out loud, shared out loud. Here's how Tia Brown McNair defines it in her book, Becoming a Student Ready Campus. And I actually have that book with me. This is the book, and I'll put that on the table too if anybody wants to take a look at it. But this is how she defines it. A student-ready campus accepts responsibility for student success by intentionally designing learning environments, policies, and practices that support diverse student needs while maintaining high academic standards. I'm personally not going to wade into the policy conversation, but that's something for you all to do as you move forward throughout your time here at ISU. But again, a student-ready campus accepts responsibility for student success by intentionally designing learning environments, policies, and practices that support diverse student needs while maintaining high academic standards. And that last part is really important. This is not about dumbing down the curriculum. It's not about having less rigor in your courses. That's not what this is at all. All right, so those are those three interconnected principles you see there. Faculty practices, they shape the learning environments that students experience inside and outside the classroom. You have the institutional systems that help students navigate the university and access those critical supports. And then finally, there's a work that the student needs to do as well. Not just come prepared, because not a lot of students are coming prepared fully for what your expectations are. And that's where we can come in and help them learn how to learn. So student learning strategies that influence how students engage with course material and develop a deeper understanding. And each area, and I'm arguing, each area requires faculty involvement. Every single one of those 3 points requires faculty involvement. And research across dozens of studies, and I actually, where's my stats guy? The stat nerd in me actually spent like a couple of hours reviewing case studies and meta-analysis reports and all this different causal and correlational research. And I had it all put in this beautiful chart for y'all. And then I realized none of you are going to want to see that. And so I stopped. But anyways, yeah, you can thank me later for that. But I do have it. And if you ever wanted to see it, I have it in a nice Excel spreadsheet with findings and the p-values and all that fun stuff. So I was nerding out on it a little bit, I admit. But I guess you're just gonna have to trust me or trust me and then fact check. There are correlational and causal research studies out there that talk about, how important faculty practices are and how they can actually help learning and deep learning, particularly when they do things like active learning, when you have clarity in your teaching, right? And meaningful student faculty interaction. That's something that we've known about for decades, I want to say centuries. But that meaningful faculty interaction with the student is really, really important. And I've often used that as a way to try to help explore with faculty, how can we get you more engaged, and don't kill me for saying this, new student orientation. I know, and I know the challenges with that. But what can we do to figure out a way so the new students can have that sense of maybe belonging right away to their major and connection to faculty? Because I hope a lot of students are coming because they're interested in the majors that you're offering and they're interested in working with the faculty. So let's talk about high impact practices. And now we're moving into the faculty practices portion of this, okay? There is strong empirical and correlational evidence, as I mentioned before, that indicate faculty practices are among the most powerful and actionable influences on student success. Many of those practices are reflected in what are known as high impact practices. Now, too often over the years, you might wondering, well, isn't a high impact practice just like a program? Isn't that like study abroad or in first year new student orientation or something like that? I would challenge us to think about it differently than that. I've seen institutions treat high impact practices as standalone programs or simply items to check off when you're doing your mid-cycle accreditation or your end of cycle accreditations to make sure that you're doing all these things for student success. That's not the most effective way to think about high impact practices. And I would argue that they're just not simply special programs that are on the periphery. Nope. They represent a set of design principles. And this is the key. They represent a set of design principles that create learning environments where engagement, persistence, and deeper learning are more likely to occur. And that last part, really important. Deeper learning, especially in the age of AI. The essence of these practices, I would argue, should begin and end with faculty and in the classroom. And you can see some of my notes there on the slide. And this is something that I've said before, and I thought it might be appropriate in this context. Students learn most deeply when they are not just receiving knowledge, right? But they're using it and applying it in real world problems. Now, researcher George Kuhn, I got to give him a ton of credit for the high impact practices, right? Because he's one of the people that discovered them, and AAC&U, of course. If you go on AAC&U's website, they have a nice, if you go on their tab at the top, you'll see trends, and it's under trends still, and you can click high impact practices, and it'll actually give you a accordion. You can open it up, and you can. It's very surface level in terms of the description of each one, but it's a start and it can kind of get you going if you're not familiar with high impact practices. So these are so when you think about it, and I was mentioning this earlier, so oftentimes we think about them as just these standalone programs, capstones, e-portfolios. Those are things that are very directed to the classroom, obviously. Diversity or global learning, that's not study abroad, first year seminars or experiences, internships, learning communities, service learning, community-based learning, undergraduate research, writing intensive courses. All of those have been known and researched as high impact practices. But again, my point in all this is think about the design principles and the practices that are creating the deeper learning that are happening within each one of those bullets there, right? So in your mind, what makes practices high impact? Think about that for a second. What makes these practices high impact? Is there a common thread? Let me hear what you have to say about that. Is there a common thread? What makes these high impact practices? And Michelle, I'm about ready to go into the video. And this is where I know I'm going to mess it up. Michelle's wonderful, by the way.
She is.
Yes.
I'll just wait till you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. Engagement, yep. Interactive, interesting. Yes. Applicable, that's right. Collaborative and applied. Yeah, not busy work. Not just giving them an assignment because you're not really sure what else to do. Connected to their learning, yeah. Yeah, so the learning stage with students beyond the classroom, that isn't that one of the hopes is that what you're covering with them, there's elements that they take with them and they remember when they graduate. Nice. Okay. I'm going to show, I felt like it's appropriate to at least give George Koo some props here. And we're going to show just a 4-minute video. He talks about high impact practices.
The reason that we've come to call certain kinds of practices high impact is because when students do them, they benefit in unusually positive ways compared to their peers who don't get the same opportunity. So some of the key features are students end up in a learning community, for example, where they're taking the same 2 or 3 classes together. Those students on average spend 20% more time a week preparing for class, which is very unusual. I think in large part it's a peer effect, but the point here is that in a high impact activity, learning community, writing intensive courses, internships, doing research with a faculty member, students end up spending a lot more time and effort. Efforts is probably the key piece here. That is focused time and energy on tasks that extend over a significant period of time, often a semester, sometimes even longer. But there are a number of other key elements. Almost always, students are in the company of faculty or their teachers or peers, and the nature of the interactions they have are, I'll say, more substantive. There are more opportunities for feedback. In real time, if something, let's say, explodes in the lab, you just don't walk away, say, well, we'll worry about the fire tomorrow. We have to deal with it now. So students get to see experts, their mentors, their instructional experts dealing with problems that are unanticipated. So how one responds to these novel situations is very important. That's really the power of, for example, study abroad. Students are now exposed to a different culture. It's best if they're immersed in it. What we know about the greatest effects of study abroad is not when you send, a group of 8 or 10 students to live in a condo above the Thames. It's when they live with the host family. So that, again, they're immersed and the deep appreciation of culture is more readily available. So feedback is very, very important. We also expect, and we see a lot more, if you will, reflection about what it is that's happening to me, and we can structure that. I think what is really powerful about a potentially high impact practice, maybe any pedagogical technique in or outside the classroom, would be how do we get students to think about what it is that they're experiencing now, and how is that different from, or how is it similar to, or what does it mean about some of the other things that they're doing in the course of their studies or working on campus or in the conversations with peers. And the last thing I'll just say, and there are, as I said, there are a few other characteristics. What we expect to have happen is that students will somehow publicly demonstrate that they now can do something different that they were unable to do prior to the research experience or the writing intensive course or the internship, for example. So this list of 10, now 11, which we might talk about later, it turns out is not just powerful for virtually every student, but if they have unusually powerful, what we call compensatory effects. So it turns out that while almost every student benefits in unusually positive ways, the students who benefit the most are the students who are least well prepared for college, who may come from low-income backgrounds. Often they're first in family, as we say, first-generation students. And I think the reason is these kinds of activities put students in concrete situations where they now see relevance and meaning of what it is they're doing in college, which sometimes is a main reason why a lot of students leave college, as we say politely, prematurely. You know, they drop out because they don't really understand what they're supposed to be doing with this history of Western civilization class, right? Very, very important backdrop and preparation. But you tie that into a learning community, now you've got students working together outside of class, they have things in common to talk about. So I don't think this is really new to a lot of people who really understand the powerful developmental effects of a well-designed undergraduate experience. But now we have some data to affirm that the people who've been doing this work and the students who experience it primarily really have some great advantages out of the undergraduate program.
Perfect. Oh, it's not going to. For some reason, we lose my clicker ability for some reason.
It just doesn't like.
There it is. Okay.
Okay.
We're starting to figure it out. All right. And yes, there's a glare, so there's sometimes I can't fully see what my slide is telling you. And I have been known to jump slides sometimes, so I got to make sure I'm paying close attention to that. I want to talk about AI now, and the emergence of AI obviously does not reduce the utility of higher education, the need for exemplar teaching and learning strategies. Actually, probably it actually accentuates and it makes it even more important. When information, summaries, drafts, you can basically tell it to write pretty much anything. When you have that happening in an instant, almost within a couple of seconds sometimes, I think the most important shift in the outcome that we have to start making is focusing on things like judgment, interpretation, application, and reflection. And so what can AI do? Well, what can it not do, right? AI tools can now generate answers to recall questions within instant. They can create outlines, summaries, etc. Many traditional assignments that we've used for years that rely primarily on information recall or surface level synthesis, those are now easier to complete without deep engagement. You could just ask Google Gemini, the question for a homework assignment, and boom, you didn't have to think about it at all, right? So what do students need to develop now? Well, they probably need to develop it before AI, but especially with AI. Students will still need to develop critical thinking. I mean, that's still essential, and even more now so than ever before. Problem solving, communication, ethical reasoning, and the ability to apply knowledge in unfamiliar contexts. You heard George Koo talk about that. So important. Little things like what me and some of your colleagues did last night in terms of having dinner together. I didn't know any of them going in. I knew one, I think I knew one or two of you, but you didn't know me. We had to have the ability to have social skills, right? To be able to talk to each other and get to know each other. I know that sounds really simple, but those are things that we can help, like little practices in our classroom different assignments and different ways of exposing them to that. These capabilities develop through experience, through feedback and reflection, and not passive exposure to information. And that's where high impact practices come in. They create the conditions where learning requires effort, interaction, and meaning making. Understanding why is this important? How does it connect to the real world? Those conditions are precisely what support deeper thinking in an AI-influenced environment. So the question is not whether students will use AI. The question is whether learning experiences require thinking that goes beyond what AI can produce. And so I'll leave it to that. There's a lot we could say about the importance of that topic and how AI is really changing things. But I wanted to at least, give you a little bit more encouragement that these practices we're talking about are even now more essential than they ever were before. So that's a little bit of talking about the faculty practices. Let's talk about institutional strategies. So as we've talked about, high impact practices are one of the most powerful ways faculty and institutions can shape the learning environment students experience inside and outside the classroom. But those are only one part of creating a student-ready campus. The other one is institutional strategies. Specifically, the classroom experiences are strengthened, right, when they are connected to institutional systems designed to support student success across the university. And so in preparing for the symposium, I looked at your Idaho State's 2024 mid-cycle self-evaluation report to NWCCU. And I also looked at your plan to meet mission fulfillment. And I was encouraged to see that you particularly spell out 3 things. And those are not the only 3 things you're doing, but I definitely wanted to highlight them in the context of this topic. Your new student orientation that you're doing. And I know you're continuing to improve it and building that up. That's great. That's an important effort. But one of the questions as I was reviewing it was I was wondering, having worked on multiple campuses, how are faculty involved in that effort of new student orientation? And I don't know the answer to that. That's something I'm just gonna ask you to think about. How can you get involved? And it may be something really simple. It could be just understanding what they're teaching the students at new student orientation and finding a way to maybe support that or mention it or do something in your classroom at the beginning. Again, you want students to see a connection from one spot to another. So it's not like these diabolical type of strategies and principles and thoughts come at them from all over, but it's interconnected. It's basically people kind of singing from the same hymnal. If faculty are not involved, what role might you play in shaping the curriculum orientation or reinforcing the ideas students encounter during their first days on campus? The other one is early alert. I was really, really pleased to see that you all are engaged in early alert and you have which is EAB's Navigate system. And I saw in talking with, I think it was Aaron Todd, you got a pretty high involvement rate of faculty for those early alert courses, which I don't know how to define that. I didn't ask him, but I'm assuming it's like the gen ed courses and maybe high risk courses. 90% involvement is really exceptional. You're generally going to see like 50 to 60% involvement in other institutions. So that I just want to give you kudos for that. And then lastly, advising. It definitely speaks a lot about your focus on improving advising. I'm going to insert some language here that may not be necessarily within the self-evaluation report, but I like to think that you're kind of approaching it as a coordinated care effort. You're approaching it as holistic advising as much as you can, and you're looking at transforming it in a different way, and I think that's fantastic. So those are 3 things that you actually point out in your reports that you're doing that are institutional systems. There are a number of other systems that you're using and doing. And again, I challenge you, those of you who are faculty, how are you involved in those? You don't have to be leading them out, but do you know what's happening in those? Is there a place where you can help in any way? If there is, I definitely encourage you to do that. So what institutional support systems most help your students succeed? I named 3. If you agree with that, you can put that down, but maybe there's some others that I missed that you want to highlight in the slide out. Yeah, tutoring, disability services, food pantry, the Bengal Success Center. Trio, I see Trio in there a lot. Yeah, ISU actually has, I believe, you've got 6 of the 8 Trio programs, right? Because I don't think you have the Trio training. Yeah, so you have right now 6 of the 8, which that's pretty significant. Not most institutions have maybe 1 or 2. So ISU, you're a pretty big player when it comes to getting federal funds to support your students, and you're supporting low-income first-gen students. So that is an institutional strategy that I definitely applaud you for doing. And oh, STEM, yeah. The Center for New Directions. Okay, I'd love to learn more about that at some point. Okay, let's keep going. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to transition. So we talked about faculty perspective practices. We talked about institutional systems very quickly. And now let's spend a little bit more time on the last one, which is the student learning experiences. Okay. So even when institutions design strong systems and faculty create engaging learning environments, students still need to know how to effectively learn. And I'm going to be mentioning a scholar by the name of Sandra McGuire. Anybody familiar with Sandra McGuire's work? She's out of LSU. I see my colleague from the education department definitely knows Sandra McGuire. This is a book that I highly, highly recommend. This is written by a faculty member. This was an instructor in chemistry. So anybody who thinks you can't do this in chemistry or those hard sciences, you absolutely can. She's proven it. Teach students how to learn. Actually, it does give you a lot of context, but I would say that there's a lot of practical examples in here. And I've given you a sheet, or Michelle has a sheet for you that actually lays out some of the top ones that I've used that work. And it kind of gives you a little bit of a jumping off spot. And it references some of the chapters and pages where you can find that in this book. So I highly recommend this one. One of the things that she does is she focuses on helping students move from passive learning to intentional and active engagement with course material. And she uses what's called a 5-step study cycle. You can see it there on the screen, those 5 steps. It's basically, I would define it as kind of a simple framework that students can use to approach learning as an ongoing process rather than something that happens the night before an exam, right? So it's very intentional. It's incremental, right? And it uses the theory of constructionism as well, right? So you're scaffolding over time rather than doing it all at once. So the 5-step study cycle, this approach emphasizes students' actions and learning strategies, not simply their perceived ability or intelligence. And that plays a major role in their success. And as you can see, part of the study strategy cycle is moving, as I mentioned before, from passive to active learning, replacing cramming with consistent engagement, develop effective time management habits. And the last one is that comprehension and retention. And I'm sorry, the last one is that perceived ability or intelligence. Nope, it's instead strategies of learning and improving. You don't have to walk in the door feeling like you're an expert, so because hopefully the students aren't, or feeling like they are smart. Rather, these are strategies that anybody can deploy regardless of where you're coming from, where you're starting from. So what is one strategy that you use to help students learn how to learn in your classroom? Because I know you all are doing something. What's one strategy you use to help students learn how to learn? Think, pair, share. Yep. I love using that one. Metacognition, yeah. So Sandra McGuire focuses, that's her theory. That's what she does is metacognition. Okay, provide a recommended weekly study schedule, real world application, peer review, applying knowledge, then sharing metacognition. They write class code of conduct to create civil engagement. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I had a government professor or teacher in high school who, at the beginning of our government class, helped us. We wrote some laws that we were going to all be bound to, including the teacher. And I was one of those students. I was an athlete. Let's just say I was not a great student in high school. And I decided it'd be funny if I got the entire class to vote, then we would have to play to the introduction of each Friday class. We had to play the Bee Gees song, one Bee Gees song. And I negotiated with the instructor that at least he got to decide which Bee Gees song it was going to be. And so we wrote it into law, and I passed it unanimously. And so that's what we did for the rest of the quarter. Every Friday we opened up with a Bee Gees song. So that's one way that you can make it fun and real world. And at the time, the Bee Gees were kind of popular. And I'm talking to the right groups. You understand what I'm talking about when I say the Bee Gees, right? I would not use that story in a room full of Gen Z probably or younger. Maybe they know who they are, but I don't want to take that risk. Okay, so thank you. You guys have been great participating with the Slido, and you can tell that polling is really easy to do. You get it. You can sign up for free. You can get an account. I would recommend getting the account because it doesn't limit you. You know how that goes, right? They got me hooked, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I want to do more, and now I got to buy the year-long subscription. But anyways, it's really simple to do, and this is also for those of us who may be more introverted or maybe be a little less willing to raise our hand and speak out. This is a very low risk way of getting people to talk and respond. I wouldn't necessarily do this many Slidos in an hour class, but I'm just kind of using it to kind of make the point that it's really easy to do, and you can get live polling right there on your screen. You can do more than just open-ended word clouds. You can do quizzes. I'm going to show you that here in a little bit. So now let's move now into the fun parts, the interactive parts, the workshop. But before we do that, I want to do a little bit of a concept check with you. Because one of the key ideas we've explored today is that student success does not depend on a single factor, right? It emerges when three things work together. And what are those three things? Do you remember? What's the first one? Yeah. What are those three things? What are those three things? Faculty practices, yep, it could be one of them, yeah. Institutional systems and student learning strategies. Ooh, yes, I love it. Okay, we got some A students in here. And when those three elements align, we create the conditions for students to succeed. So let's take a look at what that's like in practice. So let's do some group work now. I can get that. Okay. And that's kind of, I actually used AI to create that image. You probably figured that out when you saw it. Yeah. I didn't paint that. I certainly didn't code it or draw it. Yeah. But it actually did a decent job. I gave it instructions and told it, and I think I used Copilot to create that one. But you can use Canva. Canva will create images and things too. All right, let's go right into the group work. And so at your table and online as a group, I want you to discuss what successes you've had helping students with things like the 5-step study cycle, if you've used that, or by implementing an aspect of high impact practices into your classroom. What strategies are you using to engage students in the learning process that you've seen particularly that has worked well? Because one of the things I want to do today is you don't need somebody from Washington, D.C. coming in and telling you what strategies to use. I've given you a broad overview of things, but one of the things I want you to walk away with is hearing what Mark might be doing or Jim is doing in his classroom that's really working, that you may be able to take and adapt and say, well, a philosophy class, yes, that would work for. But if I take that concept and I apply it this way, I could actually do it in my, my chemistry class or something, right? It's not going to be exactly the same, but it's the principle and it's the outcome is the same that I'm looking for. Okay. So at your table, we're going to do like 10 minutes and online, discuss what successes you've had in helping students with one or more of these strategies. All right. So go ahead.
So we're not doing what's else.
Oh, no. Sorry. I didn't know I hit that button. Yeah, ignore the slide. I actually went too far. Oh no. There it is. Okay. I didn't, oh no, I didn't realize I clicked that.
Why isn't it changing?
I'll let you figure it out.
Okay.
Oh man, darn. Yeah. Yeah, you too.
What is happening here? Okay, let me call our tech people.
It may be because it's because we're in group work or something with the online. Okay, there we go.
Maybe wait.
There we go.
Okay.
It just does not, it refuses to, there we go.
Okay.
It's just like, I do not want to go there. Oh. Got it.
What is the thought? It's shadow there, and then how it waves down. The instructor plays it's small change.
People that were engaged. And so it's like, or even if they say it's actually.
You're gonna start. Course, program that we had for some year and then bring stuff up in here.
And part of you.
Not like- Fifty bucks a day.
And that.
What aspects of it? There's a library.
All right, Michelle, I think we are at 30 seconds. So go ahead and finish your thoughts. We're going to come back in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, we showing up. We were talking to you telling me about the iPads. Because the person on the square.
Okay, let's go. Let's bring it back in. I hope that you were able to at least learn a few new strategies that your colleagues are doing. I wanted to have Doug mention very quickly, there's actually going to be a workshop next week by an instructor, Klain. Is it Lambert?
Yes.
Okay, so he was here, he had to leave, and I wanted him to plug it. But Doug, do you want to say a little bit about that? Because we had talked about AI earlier, and you've got an opportunity to participate in a workshop next week that it sounded really interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Yep, so next Tuesday on April 17th from noon to 1 in our teaching center, Klain Lambert's going to talk about Stack, which is a new instructional design model harnessing adaptive AI in the classroom. I don't know much about it, but I'm super excited to hear about it.
And is that March 17th?
April,
Yes.
March 17th.
Okay,
Sorry.
wanted to make sure. Okay,
Next Tuesday, thank you.
March 17th at what time?
Noon to 1.
Noon to 1, and that's an online webinar?
Also be on Zoom.
Okay, great. Yes, and he was telling me about some of the tools. I would, if I'm available and I could go, I would love to attend that because it sounds really interesting. But I'm just going to stop there because I was hoping he could plug it, but there's some really cool tools there that he's going to talk about that are available. All right, let's move into the case studies. I was going to give you like 5-10 minutes to just share out, but I can see quickly I'm running out of time, and I want to make sure you have enough time to do the case studies, okay? So you should have been given a case study sheet when you came in. Does anybody need the case studies list? Okay, will you raise? Or you could share one. Yeah. We all good? Okay, so what I want you to do, using your worksheet, take 5 minutes to independently review the following case studies. Next, in your small group, respond to the discussion questions for about 15 minutes. And that's where I definitely want to make sure we have a chance to hear out from the groups, a few of the highlights from the discussion. And online folks, I definitely want to hear from somebody online. So we want to make sure you're ready to go with a call out there. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions? Take a few minutes to review the cases yourself. And then when your folks are all ready to go, start talking about them and answering those questions. Okay, all right, let's get going.
Yeah, of course. Entire department. Wow, here is here. So they go. Well, I should be asking that. What are different public things?
One thing do you know? I didn't know just. I remember. You know, like just things like stuff.
Professors, but it was uncomfortable when I was a student, but it's the resource page where on campus was got your entire section dedicated to those areas from something.
My name is this one.
Yeah.
I like, oh, there's tab, be like.
Yeah. Either. There. See, so that's you're either the already. I just so many years, so I wonder if. Yeah. But
So it is the change.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. And I have read, like. Yes, you can do. It says that. And so. I wonder. See.
Yeah, I know, I am. It starts right here.
It's on the slides. And also.
I was gonna say, I think the students don't know what resources they need on the birthdays. So you don't.
They don't know what questions.
Yeah. So you just follow up.
You know. Talking to. Sit there, and then.
Yeah, I think that is.
Yeah. That's a great thing. Yeah. Because. Naturally. Yeah, it's easier for them. Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's making things better about them. We are. Right? And you have to take it, and it goes, it's like everything they do, really isolated. Both of the time, because we're in the location there, right? In everything, yeah.
Oh, I agree.
So we think it's creative. Gathering. That's where a valuable value. Right, but that's, a self-selected state. Even without that, it's already sort of. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So perfect.
Right. Question is, what do we do? And they move to us.
There.
Where do they come? I know. You know what I mean? Right? I'm there. And you know, look. Why do you? My first year. Why do we know? Whether it's. We're services and Chinese country, you know, they're not exactly. I know it's there, right? How much of that? I don't know where they send these things. Sure. I know it is.
It's a, yeah. It's literally a for you to read. Program, I have very small, so it's very. All of my students, exactly. And.
Which I do too, in my program, but I was just thinking, program. And I don't know what is up in your house, if that's what it is, they're did a sign. For them, or test, it's tolerant. Yeah, I never heard. It's also that's.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. Now it's time. It's fine. Okay, yeah. I saw it. Yeah, whichever. So, but I love it. Like, now that's, you know. It's not. You're literally.
Well, because we have. Especially one is in. Right, but I mean, it's not that.
More students that that's a lot of fun.
Or professional. Yeah, the child they. Actually, a couple of hours later. I'm not, if they just put up and say, well, so that's all in the words where they are. Produce a core thing and by the name of your family. You know, there's a free language. Right, so there you're already.
I think the challenge was that when you have AI. Generation. We can interact and it's allowed to be generation now, like, we talk about whole side of. They know whole side, they don't. It's a good job. And be able to do that. So I think people have good structure. They have to work together, but just allow them to do work. It's gonna hold their hands. I think that's and so I agree with that.
But if it was 40, it's ever, once they get the taste of They're actually. I mean, it's gonna be all over. I don't think it's
They want it.
So it's like it's those. You are required to.
1 minute warning. Finish up your thought. We'll come back together in 1 minute. And don't forget, I'm going to ask each table, or I'm going to ask for a few of you to share out at least.
It's gonna be issued, so. If I can learn something.
All right, Doug and Michelle, are we ready? Ready. Okay, let's bring it back to the large group. Anyone want to volunteer to go first and just share out a strategy or two that really resonated with the group?
Hi there, I'm Jessie from online. I'll pipe in from online. I'm in Meridian.
Jessie, I love it.
Our group talked about, so for case one, kind of the first question there, we noticed, like you probably all did, that it was very lecture-based heavy, and there was really almost no opportunity for that active engaged learning. So some things we talked about were doing guided reading so that they're still working with the text, but it's a bit more collaborative, so the students are targeted in what they're getting from the reading material. Introduce more application examples and group time in the classroom while we're meeting rather than just lecturing at them. And the big thing we wanted was just give time in class to do this applied problem solving and bring in the text.
I love it. Thank you. Mark.
We took a look at this and it decided that it was more a set and get. Hopefully you figured it out. And a long lecture is an ineffective way of learning. And so we too, very similar to the previous person, suggested that maybe shorter segments, 3 bullet points, and then an application or a discussion or a share out or any of those other activities that allow the brain to actually process rather than just take notes and hopefully you'll get this. We also noticed that it appears to be it's more knowledge and comprehension in the lecture, and then the assessments are more application, and so you're taking a huge skip in the question of what you want out of a student based on what you're giving.
Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent. Yeah, and that was all on this. I studied for hours. How many of you heard that before? I know I have from students. Yeah. And not to throw them under the bus at all, but it's something that you commonly hear. And so how do we help them through that? And that's where we can come in and help teach them some study strategies, but also build that learning within the classroom. So it's not so lecture based. Even so, all of us probably have classes where we do lectures. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's little techniques, as Mark noted, in what I've been doing with you to stop and reflect. What did we just learn? What do you think about that? what's the sticking point for you? And you can do it in high stakes ways, but you can also do it in low pressure ways to get them to talk and reflect and to think about the learning. One of the things that I've used, and Sandra McGuire is as an example, recommends doing for lectures, is about every 10 to 15 minutes, and 15 might be a little stretch, pause and ask a reflection question at least, right? It breaks it up. So that's not just a want, right? For like 60 minutes of you just pure talking. Okay. Others.
Just to be on the devil's advocate side, I think it's very difficult to do a lot of these things that we talked about for, is it even?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear the louder voice. It's a lot harder to implement those things for faculty who have been, trained in a traditional lecture style.
Yeah.
As well as, have been doing it for a long time. And there's got to be a lot more support for someone to change from that kind of teaching to more innovative way of doing things. And it's just not easy. So we can talk, all the time until cows come home about how to do it better, right?
Mhm.
But it is much difficult task for, I think, faculty to understand where they're gaining, where they're losing, right? Because these faculty, certainly, some of us were in teaching classes that are very content heavy,
Uh-huh.
right? How do I cover all these materials, right?
sure.
That's a common, so I buy in all these things.
Yeah.
And I practice many of these practices, but it's always a 2 step forward, 1 step backward kind of situation.
yeah.
You want to be at least 1 step ahead now,
Yeah.
right? But it is so much more difficult, I think.
I appreciate you recognizing the challenge, and I want to definitely support that. It's definitely challenging, but all of you are gifted. You've overcome challenges before as students, you overcame challenges, and you've overcome them as an instructor. And as you've noted, you found ways, maybe they're just little things like every 10, 15 minutes you stop and say, somebody share back what we just talked about, or whatever it is. You ask a reflection question. It could take literally 30 seconds to a minute to do that out of your lecture portion, right? So there's just little things that you can do. What I would like to do is ask, and this is something you could do too. If you have a student who asks a question like this, instead of the instructor answering it, maybe you bring it back to the group. What's your thought about that? So anybody have a response to that?
So that's where things like professional development. Continued professional development. So, we all get some kind of.
Yeah.
Last time.
Yeah.
Discussion. Really help it. Have to be. Or cut a class, please. This is a seminar, a webinar that you listen to when you have some time.
Yeah.
It could be reading YouTube videos.
Yeah, all great points. And again, it doesn't mean you have to employ all of these strategies in every lecture. Maybe you just do one of them, and you'd be amazed at how it can help the students. There's going to be something I'm going to do with you at the end, and that's something you might be able to do at the end, is what's called the muddiest point. Go ahead.
I think to answer your last question of turning it over to the students, maybe you have an answer for this, but I also know that the first thing students hear is what sticks. And so I'm always worried that when I say, hey, can somebody else answer that? And they answer it wrong.
You're like, oh no.
So I
Yes.
know.
So
I like a lot of these student strategies, but there's always still this part of me that's like, hey, that one group that I didn't get to, they could be going off the reservation and I have no idea.
Right. And now how do I bring us back? Right. Yeah. And sometimes you have to take some risks and try things out. And you may try some new things. Like I tried Slido with you all, and maybe that didn't work. And then, okay, why did it not work? And what can I do differently next time maybe you have a couple of students that maybe they don't talk much, but that person knows the answer. you might be willing to maybe take the risk and say, hey, Mark, would you mind, sharing your perspective on that particular topic? Because I knew I just talked to them yesterday in my office hours and they got that down. So you might be able to pick some people that they've got it, but you also have to be careful there because you don't want the same two people to answer every question. Yeah. So it really is content specific. It's sometimes it's specific to each class too, right? Every class is different. Yeah.
Still strong. So you do take the wrong answer, but I think in our group, Don was saying that he's used is it Nearpod?
Nearpod, yes.
That's one way to get answers from everyone in the class, and then you pick the one that's correct.
Right.
You can use Padlets, you can use Pull Everywhere, you can use Slido.
Yeah.
These all are systems that allow us for anonymous feedback in real time.
Yeah. Do you, Don or somebody, will you say the name of that again? It's called Nearpod.
It's an educational platform. It's called Nearpod. There's a free version of it, but the engagement part of it is if you're doing it online or you're in a classroom structure, you can do engagement with students on a significantly higher level because you build it into the lesson of what you're doing.
Nice. Yeah. Love it.
If I could just
Yeah.
add in real quickly,
Yeah.
our amazing instructional designers at the ITRC are also very happy to brainstorm with faculty about ideas for getting students engaged in the classwork.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not just in the class too. It's and this is what I'm going to have you do outside of the symposium, this class, but is your assignments. What are some ways to just kind of beef up or enhance the learning that's happening in the assignments? Maybe not everyone, just maybe pick one and try it out. And sometimes it's a flop when you first do it. Don't be discouraged. Keep trying, keep learning.
Looking at the second case study.
Participation is low, I believe.
One thing, I'm looking at kind of the resources and sharing resources and how to connect students outside of new student orientation.
Yeah.
One thing that I know that the public administration and political science departments do, and I've seen it around campus as well. There, for better or worse, there are cross-listed classes where you have graduate students and undergraduate students in the same classes. Graduate students usually have some more assignments that they do, more reading. But what has naturally happened within the political science department anyway is that many of those graduate students kind of turn into that mentor naturally, where undergraduate students sometimes will feel more comfortable coming to them and asking for those resources and sharing those resources. And I know from my time bridging undergraduate and graduate school, those folks who are graduate students are still people I go to today in my professional life to talk to because they reached out to me during that time. And so I think that, while we're at an institution that does have to do cross-listing, I think that there are advantages to be taken there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a benefit to you. There are other thing too that you might think about is, one of the places where I kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, in higher ed was I was a trained group facilitator as an undergraduate student and then as a graduate student. So I would lead what are called SI groups. I partnered with a faculty member from whether it was government 101 or psychology research methods or biology. It didn't matter what the discipline was. I was trained to be able to do it. And we would have students come in and meet with us, with me as a group. We would meet together twice a week for an hour. The faculty member knew exactly what we were going to go over. It all lined up with exactly what the faculty member was going over in the classroom and the assignments. And I used gamification. I used reflection. I did all the kind of the fun things that some of my chemistry, and I've done chemistry. Chemistry professors were like, oh, I don't have time for that. Okay, let me help you outside and do some supplemental instruction with them. And so we did it. Our students across the board, across the institution, performed at a 0.6 higher GPA for those that attended versus those that didn't. And the faculty, 9 out of 10 of them loved it, and kept coming back to do it again. So I would definitely, talk to your tutoring center and see. The other thing that I've noticed that some faculty will do as well, and again, not everybody, but they'll actually work with the tutoring center to actually go in and have some of their office hours in the tutoring center, if you've got a center. And they'll let their students know, hey, I'm going to be over in such and such at this time each week, and I'm there if you want help in understanding your problems. I met with a faculty member at Normandale Community College a couple of weeks ago, and we were doing a site visit of their institution, and that's one of the things that they do, and they just have had tremendous success with it. And the faculty member that I spoke to was a math professor. So he loved it, he did it, and just found it to be much more engaging. All right, I'm gonna stop there, and we're gonna finish up here. I'm not gonna do the actual independent assignment because I've run out of time, which is super common for me. But what it is it's your homework assignment. I'm sorry, I gave you homework. I would love to be able to continue to engage with you in this conversation. So go ahead and do this independent assignment of thinking about an assignment that you offer in your class. How can you make it a little bit more engaging? How can you develop more deeper learning that occurs for the students? It doesn't have to be something that is like revolutionary. It can be just a couple of tweaks, right? And so I'd love to hear how that goes for you, or if you've tried one of these practices that we've talked about, or if you end up getting Sandra McGuire's book or digging deeper into high impact practices. I would really, really love to continue to engage with you on that and just learn how it's going for you. And if you're like, I tried that activity that we talked about and it sucked. And let's talk about why. And I would love to hear, because I want to encourage you too, because sometimes it doesn't, just because the first time didn't work, doesn't mean that's not something that would work. What is it that you need to tweak, right? And it's always that kind of that growth mindset is what I'm encouraging. All right, so the last thing, I'm going to skip some slides here. Okay, so I have some prizes to give out, and I only have a few minutes, but we got some prizes, and I've got a concept review at the end, a little mini. I'm going to call it a quiz because you're faculty, and I think you can handle that language. It's going to be a little bit of a quiz, and I'm going to ask you some questions about what we talked about. So I just want you to think back over the last 2 hours and the activities we did together, and answer these questions. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you one final question. And there's going to be a question probably about the slides that I'm using, if anybody was paying attention to that. Okay, let's see if this will work. All right, join the quiz. All right, you ready? Everybody ready? Okay. Okay, so which three areas work together to create a student-ready campus? Doug, maybe when I go to the slide, would you read the question? Because I'm having trouble seeing it. Okay. All right. Okay. We reviewed it a couple of times and you were paying attention. Nice job. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. This is where being anonymous is not a good thing. Well, I think for all of you, I think you're going to do very well.
Okay, our next question, a student-ready campus focuses primarily on
The one thing that this doesn't have is like a timer. If it does, I didn't realize it did. And that's one thing I like about Kahoot. Has anybody used Kahoot before? Yeah. You can get some really fun stuff. We used Kahoot at a new student orientation when I was the director of a major exploration advising, and the students loved it. And we did a pre and post test with the students. about the knowledge, about the key learning outcomes from orientation before they came, and we did one after. They met with advising, they went through all of our orientations. Each advising unit had one. There was like 13 of them going on. We broke them up by major. And my area ended up scoring the highest. The major exploration students had the highest learning going into that because we did a tutorial before they came to orientation. And we did a lot of active learning with them during orientation. They scored by far the highest in terms of their knowledge going out of orientation. So these strategies work. All right, so what's the answer? Okay, everybody said number 2. And you're right. Okay, I'm gonna have trouble figuring out who the winner is. Oh, wow. Okay. All right, trio.
Take a break now.
I promise I did not give her the questions and answers beforehand.
Approximately what percentage of first generation Pell eligible students graduate within 6 years at ISU?
I'm gonna go quick on this one because all right, 10 seconds. All right. Okay, all right. So now we're gonna have some separation happening. Okay, yep. Who we got? Oh, okay. By 3 seconds. All right.
Which of the following characteristics are commonly associated with high impact practices?
Oh, the faculty's favorite multiple choice question and answer. Students love this. A, B, C, D, E, and C, all the above, none of the above. I don't know. Again, if you had a tutor who was trained, a facilitator that had a group that was meeting twice a week, they could do some of this throughout their time. Take your notes, take the information, the key learning out, and gamify it, make it fun. Apply it to the real world. Heck, I learned how the 3 branches of government works through Schoolhouse Rock when I was a kid, and it stuck with me. Anybody remember that? Yeah. And the reason, right, Mr. Bill, the reason why is because it's engaging, it's fun, and learning does not have to be boring. Oh, okay. A lot of you had A, C, and E, and you would have been correct. All right, next question. Okay, who we got? Oh, Kinsey. Okay, we're figuring out that quick responses are the name of the game. Quick, correct responses.
According to Sandra McGuire's research, 5-step study cycle helps students.
Okay, I'm going to start going faster on these ones. All right, I'm going to move. I'm going to close it. Oh, okay. Nice. I'm paying attention. Oh, okay.
According to the presentation, faculty typically submit early alerts at ISU during which
Oh,
week
shoot.
of the semester?
I actually did not say this. I wish I could say that was intentional. But there are times when we as faculty might ask a question when we maybe we covered it like very quickly, or we thought we covered it, but we actually didn't. This is an example of me doing that to you.
Participation.
I apologize. But you did hear me say that like 90% of ISU are doing it. All right. This is kind of going to be a pure guess for some of you. But think about it. When are the important times in your semester that they may be doing that? All right. Okay, yeah, so we got some variability here, understandably so. This is another thing. If you do tests and multiple choice is part of it, and you get you have a question that comes back and half the class or more missed it, you might want to rethink something on the faculty side. So that's me saying to myself, next time, don't forget that. Okay, but a lot of you already actually do this, or you just are really good guessers. Okay. And you were right. You did know the answer to that question. All right. And our final Slido question.
How many slides in this presentation include original Idaho State University photos rather than images created using code?
This was my separator question. Yeah. And another one of those things where I had it, it's there, it's on the slides, but I never really pointed it out. I didn't say anything about it really. I meant to mention of something like that at some point, but it was very subtle. The questions you're getting right are largely the ones that I emphasized and I use reflection on. The ones that are variable are the ones where I didn't do those things. All right, let's see. Oh, wow. Okay. It was one slide was actually a legitimate Idaho State University slide. Or not slide, but photo.
We know our ISU branding.
That's right. That's right. Only all the other slides, photos. Sorry. Oh, wow. Photos on the slides were all generated by either Copilot or Canva. And I just told it what I wanted and those things, and I had to work with it a little bit, but it got it for us. All right, so Raylan, Kinsey. We have 4 people that got 7 out of 7. Is there anybody missing from the list that got all of them? Anybody else? No? Okay. Okay. All right, so I got 4 people, and I think I have. Okay. So I've got 3. So those 4 of you, I'm going to ask you this question, okay? Because I've got another one. I'll give to the person who gets this. I've got 3 prizes plus another one. Think back over the last 2 hours over the activities that we did together. On one of the slides, we discussed several strategies that make learning experiences high impact. One of the 4, who can identify 3 of those strategies that we actually used during the workshop today? Be specific. What did we do?
No one said anything.
I didn't say anything. Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. What did I do?
So made us reflect.
Yes.
We were given assignments, especially working in groups.
So you had group work going on, interaction. Mm-hmm.
And then just apply things to different contexts.
Yes. Yep. So kind of that real world application as well, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Ding, ding, ding. Great job. Okay. You get a $15 Starbucks gift card. And the other three, you get a little gift bag. Yeah. And courtesy of Doug and Michelle. So great job. All right. Give them a round of applause. And I will set those on the table. And the last thing I want to do with you really quick while I'm doing that, and I know we're out of time, is something that you can do is what's called the muddiest point. At the very end of your lecture or your class, you can ask them the following types of questions. What is one idea from today that you plan to focus on in your teaching going forward? So that's a question about what did you learn today that you're pretty clear on. Okay, what is one idea from today? Now you obviously, I probably wouldn't use Slido for these. I just have them write it on a piece of paper. Make it easy. What is one idea from today that you plan to focus on in your teaching going forward? I'm actually going to skip forward because we're out of time. And the second question you could ask them is, and what remains the muddiest point or an area you would like to explore further? Okay. So again, what do you feel most confident about, or what's something that really stuck out to you that you're confident in? That's the first question. The second one is, what's a buddy point? If you give yourself a little, like 2 minutes at the end, you could actually have them work with their elbow partner and actually share it. And then you can have a couple of people raise their hand and say, here's the muddiest point that I have, or you can have them turn it in if you don't have time for that. And you can use the muddiest point information when they turn it in to help you understand, what do I need to go over a little bit more in class with them, okay? And this is a quote that I've always felt to be particularly powerful. Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. And that's by John Dewey. And the last one, as I was preparing this, this was something that kind of resonated with me, and I jotted this down, and I thought it might mean something to you. A student-ready campus is not only about helping students persist to graduation. It is about creating learning environments where students develop the habits of mind that higher education is meant to cultivate. We need to develop individuals who are not mere reflections of other people's thoughts and aspirations. We need independent thinkers who can act with purpose and contribute meaningfully to society. This is our wise instructors. Thank you very much. You guys have been wonderful, and I apologize for taking you over just a little bit. So thank you so much.